All right, good morning, guys. So last week we did 5th grade science, and today we are going to transition to 5th grade math. The reoccurring theme that has been for us as a whole is content. So I think even though you will see that Ms. White has some really good data, I think we have to get back to how do we take the content and really push students beyond 5th grade math. So if I could have Ms. Godfrey, could you read out today's objective?
To ensure that we are breaking down the TEKs to set students up for success beyond the classroom.
I want you to take about 10 seconds and I want you to think what it means to have set students up for success beyond the classroom. What does it mean to set students up for success beyond the classroom? So Lee, you presented last week. So what does it mean to set students up for success beyond the classroom?
What involves going back to content like cross curriculums, like having students being able to apply what they learn in one classroom to another classroom.
Yes, having students be able to apply what they learn in one content area or one classroom in another classroom. Ms. Godfrey.
When I think of this, I also consider like math, right, is something we use, or things that we're learning now is something we use beyond the classroom, beyond college. It's on a day-to-day basis. So even learning to subtract to ensure you're getting the correct change back with cash, or your credit score, or it's all math.
Right.
Your interest rate.
Yes. So it's super important that we create good habits in our students. Obviously, we're going to work with content here, but it's so super important that we do that beyond the classroom. So when you look at your exit ticket, or your WFA, you are going to see that these two TEKs are going to be the focal point. So, Lisa, if you could read out 5.3b for me.
Multiply with fluency a 3-digit number by a 2-digit number using the standard algorithm.
And that's question 1. Question 2, Ms. Godfrey, is 5.4b. Could you read that out?
Represent and solve multi-step problems involving the 4 operations with whole numbers using equations with the letters standing for the unknown quantity, introducing variables to students.
Yes, that's the second question. So in actuality, me being a former algebra teacher, I didn't even know that students actually learned about variables in the 5th grade. So well beyond, way before they get to algebra, they actually hone in on what the definition of a variable is, so that by the time they see me, they should actually know what it means or have at least heard it. So 5.3b was on the quiz that you guys have last year. So I wanted to take a look at last year's data and do a couple of comparisons before we actually dive into the data that you're going to see that we have here today. So last year, 21-22 school year, there were 51 students that were in 5th grade or that took this WFA, and they had 4 questions, which, as we know, in a lot of our spaces, we have transitioned due to the new STAR redesign. This is how students performed last year on 5.3b. So, not mastered is in the light blue, the darker blue is mastered. So again, this is 5.3b. When we look at this year, we now have 103 students. So remember last year we only had 51. Now this year they have 103 students. Last year we had 4 questions. This year we had 2 questions for the same WFA. And I'm going to show you the mastery in just a moment. So essentially we only had 6 kids that did not at least approach. Here's what that breakdown looks like again. So 5.3b, 65 students mastered. 5.4b, 93 students mastered. So we did see an increase. So I know that some of us, and my apologies, may have gotten our information late. So I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes if you have not worked on that exit ticket, or WFA, sorry. If you have not worked on that WFA, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. And you all should have a paper copy and a digital copy. I know it's been some time, but try to put yourself in the 5th grader's shoe. We have about 2 minutes left. If everybody just give me a thumbs up. All right. Let's get to moving. So you also have a copy of Miss White's deconstruction. So I think I flipped that one over. You also should have a copy of Miss White's deconstruction. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to compare your deconstruction to her deconstruction. Yes. Yeah. Compare her deconstruction to your deconstruction. And I want you to now think about 2 things. What is something that you and Miss White have in common? What is something that you did that she may not have done?
For me, I did not do the draw because I didn't know what that looks like for 5th grade, so it's nice to see how they're supposed to draw it out. what was similar though is we both identified what needs to be known in question one, what we're trying to figure out in question one, so she has it as know and don't know. And then we both wrote out the answer by doing the long division, long multiplication. And one thing I really loved what she did that I did in question two that I don't see her do in question two, where she underlined each in question one instead of that's multiplying or dividing. I did that same work when I chose my correct answer, so I wrote out where the subtract sign is, I wrote that means sold, because I no longer have it. And then I see each again, she wrote in the question, that's divide or multiply. So I just wonder how we can be teaching certain terminology to students for them to see if something is being sold, that means you're taking it away from your inventory, that means you're subtracting.
Yes.
Or each, how do you differentiate if each is a division problem or a multiplication problem? Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to call my Michelle. Go ahead, Ms. Gosser, what she got?
For me, what was similar was writing down what I did know, like from breaking down the question, and then breaking down the multiplication, because I had no idea what the draw was either. And then I'm even wondering, like, a wondering that I have is like their process of the multiplication, like what are the steps? Like I know, I remember vaguely, like boxes, like starting with up and down and then across, like what you're multiplying. So I just wonder like those steps, but it looks like even with the student data, like.
Don't go to this,
oh,
don't go to
okay.
You good, I'm gonna
I
see
need
this.
So, similar to what Ms. Young has Dr. said, so I did do the long multiplication. I didn't do it the way, Ms. White is in it, because I wasn't sure how to do the redraw, right, method. I did do like a little small diagram for me to be able to like separate like one case and then it turned into 144 roses. But also just like Ms. Young mentioned, when it comes to like what's different is that when it came to the vocab, like when I saw how many roses, that means I know how to find the total, like the overall total. And then for number two, when I saw like the number of piles, that means that I knew I had to go from what's called like the large amount of 185 pieces of wood, and like basically I have to group them into piles. So that means I know how to eventually divide. And also for number two, I like wrote my process out. So like where it says Mr. Anderson had 185 pieces of wood, he sold 25 pieces. Well, I knew I have to subtract that first. And then when I said each pile would contain 40 pieces of wood, and like looked at the question, I knew that's the second step I had to do. So I wrote that out to help me figure out the order and see which is the right answer. But yeah.
Good. So I like that you guys, even though this may not be your strong suit, you do have your math brains on. Now we are going to get to what Ms. Godfrey wanted to do, which is look at student work. So you will have 3 different stacks. You have SPED, our emerging bilinguals, and our African Americans. One of those African Americans is also a SPED student. It's not going to take you long. But if you look at their work, almost everybody got 100 on this except for one student. Because to be honest, they performed really well. They really, really did. But there's still a huge push that I saw some of you do that they did not do. So as you're looking at the work, what is something, and we noticed that Dejan is the only person that missed number 2, right? What is something that he could have done that really would have helped him out?
He got stuck on each pal contained 40 pieces of wood. He didn't understand what each meant, so he chose it as subtracting. He got the first part right. I started with 85, I sold 25, so I'm taking 25 away. And then when it came to the next part about each pal, instead of seeing how he needs to divide, he chose subtracting instead. So that was his misconception, what is each pal mean? So he probably in his head thought, if I'm creating more pals, I'm still taking it away, but not fully understanding what that word means when setting up from word problems.
But we wouldn't know, right? You're gonna have to assume.
Yeah, I'm assuming.
You have to assume. Ms. Godfrey, Ms. Elise, did you guys notice anything?
Overall,
Overall, it could be overall, it could be within lines.
so
She's the only person that missed number two.
they were, for number one, we saw that they all knew they had to multiply. However, I don't see like the process, like how did you know you had to multiply? And then number two, like it says use redraw right, no one used redraw right. According to, if we're looking at Ms. White's example, no one has it similar to her. When it comes to this second one, I think if there would have been like a way for students to figure out how to annotate or also use redraw right on here, and they would have been able to break it down and know what steps to take to get to the answer.
Yeah, I agree. The annotation.
I'm curious though, because consistently across the board, there's no work being shown.
Correct.
I'm just curious to what, and I'm saying this because I had to have this critical conversation myself with a department, but I'm very curious what the instruction looks like before this.
Correct.
Are we only, I had to tell a certain department, we need to build skills in students and not just give them the pacifier to be able to like get through the lesson just because you want to have a strong bubble. I would much rather us have a bubble that is maybe yellowish right now so we can truly know student misconception and work through that to move them to the green, opposed to not doing that. And we're seeing all this green and the student work is no work being shown. It's making me just to infer, what did you do with the exit ticket before it was given to the students? Are you only teaching the exit ticket? Are we only teaching students how to take a test, but not the actual skill so they can transfer to whatever problem they see in front of them? So the fact that all of these students are not showing their work and they all just circled D has me just very curious on what the setup is looking like. Are we really teaching students a skill, or are we just teaching them or saying certain things to them so you're mastering, quote unquote, the exit ticket?
And that goes back to what our,
No, I'm saying even to that, just looking at her exemplar, like for number 2, for example, it says process of elimination, use mathematical terms and operations, like that's, I don't know, for me it was like really, like, how is that teaching them how to be able to understand, like, how to get to the answer?
So I want to go back to, if I get it wrong, y'all just bear with me. Oh, I might be all right. Our objective is to assess students up beyond the classroom. We did not do that. I agree with Ms. Young. I don't care what your bubble looks like. When I look at these, I keep wanting to say exit tickets because there are only 2 questions. These formative assessments, students are not set up for success. It makes me ask the question, did we prepare them beyond the classroom? Because we didn't. Most of these students show no work. If I was to pull these and grade them, I would probably give most of these students possibly 1 point out of 2 because they did not show any work, which means I cannot help them with their thought process. It is super important that we are setting students up for success beyond the classroom, and the only way that we can do that is to help students with build thinking, critical thinking skills, which is what math is all about. So Ms. White and I did have a brief conversation about this, because if you look at her exemplar and if you take most of the kids, they do not match. Now, I will say, and I know the region probably wouldn't be very happy with this, I am not a huge advocate of redraw right as a first teach. I think it is more an accommodation method. Now, can it help a student? For sure. For sure. Can it help our EBs and our exceptional learners? For sure. But it is not always necessary if I understand what the problem is asking, which goes back to that cross content. So one of the things that I have really been preaching to the department as a whole is that we train students to first read the problem and then deconstruct before they even begin any work. That way, when we get to an open-ended question that does not have multiple choice, or even if we do have one that has multiple choice, there is some sort of thought process that is shown on their work. Because again, if we look at number 2, which is ironic, it is multiple choice and there's no student work on there. So it makes you wonder, what was the conversation directly before they took this test or quiz? Now, what I do like is when you start to annotate, if you look, which we can probably assume that Dejan did, most of the students knew or should know that you should subtract. Because if you sell something, there's only 2 operations that can go with that. Either subtraction or division. So rightfully so, when she goes and speaks about the process of elimination, we don't necessarily explain what that thought process is, right? If we look at A and C, that should be part of the process of elimination. But here's the why. Why would we eliminate A and C automatically? I don't even need to go beyond 3 words after the first sentence. How would I know that me as a student, why would I eliminate A and C? Why would those not be a part of my answer choice?
Because sold is
Sold goes back to our vocabulary. Go back to our vocabulary. If I'm selling something, I have to know that something is being taken away. If we look at A and C, we know that we have addition and multiplication, which is literally impossible to do. So it goes back to vocabulary being extremely essential, just like it is in ELA. If we teach students to use those same thought processes and concepts cross-curricular, they end up being able to solve more questions correctly and being able to show their thought process, which is what we want them to do. Oops. All right. I want us to look at, I think it's Camille. Camille is in the AA stack. Camille is one of our AAs, and she is also a SPED student. I'm so sorry, you can't see that very well. But what's something that you kind of noticed that Camille actually did do? That her peers did not.
It looks like she identified keywords, and it looks like she did her process, like break down the question and like write out the numbers. She showed her work.
She essentially showed her work. We don't see that on, I don't think anybody else's, if I'm correct. Nope. We don't see that. And Camille is one of our SPED students, one of our lower performing. So my coaching conversation with Ms. White, and not just necessarily this formative assessment, but in general, if I deconstruct with the Camille's in mind, with my exceptional learners in mind, that is teaching that's going to work for every single student. If I start to deconstruct and I start to use my TEKS, the breakdown of my know and show, I can then create a criteria for success that is conceptual and transferable. i.e., all of my students are now showing their work because I am demanding it from them every single class period in everything that they do. Questions so far? Thank you guys. So, content team time, what is it going to look like for us? Tomorrow, the push for that is to go back to the know and show. That goes back down to breaking down the TEKS. We're not doing that well. And that's showing because our students cannot answer essential vocabulary terms. They cannot explain their thought process. So we have to go back to the know and show, which will be our topic for Wednesday. So it's going to be a shift from our stand and deliver back to the foundation of know and show. The outcome of doing that, we'll be able to create a strong CFS, which we also do not see on this formative assessment. There is no CFS. There is no criteria that students are following, which should be present not only on the board, but also on this exemplar. When we do a strong CFS, it helps to put the heavy lifting on the students, and then you can create more impactful, strong first teachers, small groups, and it should also help with your just in time lessons. This in content team time, doing the know and show, will also lead to a stronger model, which we need to do. I've actually broken down the way that my expectation for their classes to run, how it should look, so that students are actually taking and writing down vocabulary terms in a notebook. So this is the push that we are going to have tomorrow as a team.
I don't know if I missed that even, but
Yes.
what is the impact statement that we're giving?
Is then so? I should have put it first. Okay, sorry. If we create a strong know and show for the TEKS, then we will be able to leverage prior knowledge so that we have a strong first teach and are able to use accurate data to build a targeted reteach.
I want to push the then,
Okay.
because at the root of everything that we were talking about, right,
Mm-hmm.
is students showing their work.
Okay.
In order to show their work, they need to have context on vocabulary, correct?
Okay.
Because you even asked Godfrey, what is the word that we need to be looking at in question 2,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's something I brought up, something you brought up. We're consistently hearing that students are not showing work, and
Yeah.
I cannot show my work because I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what's being taught, right? Or I don't know what words to look for.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree the if.
Okay.
I agree the if because we cannot teach students academic vocabulary if we don't know.
Right.
If we don't know, then we don't know what it needs to look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the teacher. I want that then to not be teacher focused, but student focused. If a teacher's able to create a strong no-show for the TEKS, then what are we hoping to see with student work that we're noticing is the gap right now? And this is like a question to all,
Okay.
but
Okay.
then should be pushed to be more on what we identified at this present moment.
Then students will be able to leverage academic vocabulary.
So, do we agree with that portion so far, starting? So they're leveraging the academic vocabulary because my teacher taught it to me.
Mm-hmm.
What then? So what? So what should be true?
If we create a strong know show for the TEKS, the students will be able to leverage academic vocabulary. I'm trying to think of basically so that they are able to show their thought process.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
So students are able to.
Students. The students will be able to leverage academic vocabulary so that students are able to show their work. Sorry. If we create a strong no show for the teams, then students will be able to leverage academic vocabulary so that students are able to show their work.
But before I can even show my
Okay,
work,
to-
me knowing this academic vocabulary is gonna help me to do what with the problem?
To
Break it
break
down.
down the problem.
Right, so students will be able to better decode
Deconstruct.
or deconstruct the problems so they can better show their work.
better, so that students are able to deconstruct. So that students are able to deconstruct the problem and show their process.
If I was to write it, that's what was in my brain, I was just trying to get us there.
Okay. So if we create a strong know and show for the T's, then students will be able to leverage academic vocabulary so that students are able to deconstruct the problem and show their thought process.
When we say we, who is we?
As a team.
I'm asking because
Oh.
you're delivering this, I'm just asking.
Yes, I really believe that this is essential for all, not just Miss White. Because I'm a huge advocate for a strong criteria for success. And I think that, to me, this impact statement is not just for one person. This is for, it's actually cross-curricular. If we actually do this, we break a team down, that's the problem. That's actually where I've been really pushing my, the writing team and even discussing it with social studies. Ms. Fuller in particular, we just talked about it on Friday. It's the foundation that students are having an issue with, that teachers are also saying, this is where we're having an issue. And if we get back to the foundation, what does the T say? Using a dictionary, being able to break down what's being asked of me. Like, I think that we'll be able to see strong data by creating what's already, like not even recreating the wheel, I'm sorry, by like just doing what's already there. Students use a dictionary when they take their STAR, but they haven't used it all year. So it's like, it's not necessarily an accommodation, but you can use it, but they don't use it until STAR, but that time they don't even know what they're doing. So if we start to break that down now, we get students in the habit of, hey, I don't know what this word means, let me go figure it out. Or I don't understand what this means, Ms. White, can you help me to deconstruct the problem so I know how to answer it?
And I ask that we, because for two reasons. First, before I say that, why do y'all think I pushed Beeman on this action step?
For her to be happening across the board.
Beyond that, yes, and what else?
For the we part or what? Push the whole impact statement.
Yeah,
Can I answer?
sure.
Oh. I think our impact statements are not meant for content, they're meant for the school to drive, students to success. Again, I'm gonna go back to my objective beyond the classroom.
Yeah, and even the impact statement, while it was, you took thought process in it, it was very broad. It was here,
Okay.
but our purpose of APMs is to laser in on exactly what students need to work on at this present time, right?
Okay.
And when we were having our discussion, you had this big picture, and then you continued to narrow, laser us in, and you lasered us in on what is missing in student work, which was what? Their thought process and knowing the vocabulary.
Yeah.
And if we're lasering in on that, that then should be present also in the action step as well. So, and that's like, that's gonna be my purpose in APMs, is to push, because we should all be actually pushing each other.
Right.
If we're gonna be excellent, no, there's no room for us to just like, okay, great.
Right.
No,
Right.
like,
Agreed.
this could definitely be stronger. You
Agreed.
just made this stronger, and then when I asked you about that you hit the nail on the head. APMs are not only about math right now. Even though we're studying math, I can guarantee all of us, even in electives, all of us can be like, dang, I'm gonna take that and I need to take it to my content as well. Because we're not just building up math right now, we're building the entire campus. We're building the entire campus. So this, and I'm so glad that we pushed it too, because we were about to get to an action step that we have been talking about for 2 weeks now. I said it in my APM, so Lee said it in her APM. If I heard CFS in the action step one more time, I was gonna say, okay, y'all, scratch the whole table. We need to get back to the drawing board, because this is the second APM that we had said something about CFS. However, if we are still saying CFS are missing, we need to have a crucial conversation with people. Because I talked about it, you talked about it, there's no reason why every APM is the same action step. So I'm so glad this is the action step. And this is the correct, not only because of that, but this is the correct action step. Because I know for sure, if this is going to be true in math, this will be true in reading. This will be true in science. This can even be true in electives, in social studies. This is a school-wide action step. And I would love for all of us to even pause for a second, and I want y'all to think about how you turn this over to your team, and who is the main teacher that you want to leverage this action step for. You're still gonna close. I just want to
No, I definitely appreciate a good push. I love coaching, so I appreciate the push to even get my wheels turning. Because like I said, I literally just had a very similar conversation about academic vocabulary with Miss Fuller, which is part of my social studies department. So I think that, and you writing, Miss Wells and Dr. Manning moving to having a class of dictionaries, which I then even spoke to, again, Ms. Fuller about. So it's definitely hitting, like this same conversation just happened a little bit different. And in Ms. White's defense, she did have a CFS for her work, but not on her WFA.
Oh, for sure.
And and my push for her is to make it stronger. So I did give her
probably. You make it stronger with the no show.
No show. Yeah.
So it.
And I see some.
I'm just glad it's not the conversation. So, Godfrey, how will you turn this over to your team? And who is the main person you have in mind?
I would definitely begin with like discussing how this could look across the board for electives, no matter what you're teaching. And then I've only really kind of observed more so Mr. Nesby's class and seeing the disconnect when it comes to students, especially like working on their projects, and students who may be done with their projects, like pushing what they need to know and how they're going to show it themselves for their projects that they have in this class.
Yeah, I think even with me having my ear to what you're saying, like when I go down in his spaces too, I want to hear students say left stage, right stage, damn it, like those actual academic vocabulary words. Now that I hear that, that's one space that you're really, really looking for. So my ears will be tuned to him doing that as well, and looking at his lesson plans to ensure he's building that in students as well. So Lise.
Just something I want to add to real quick that stuck to me that you said, Beeman, is like even when it comes to academic vocabulary, you said something like think about the like when it comes to like this, for example, our students with IEPs, and think about like how you can use the accommodations and then just go from there. So for me, I would apply this to like all my teachers, or just all the teachers in general, because of the fact that and also talk to Steph about this, because one thing that they have expressed as well is that how some teachers are giving them pushback even after the accommodations presentation about like they're still not sure how to implement accommodations, or it's too much work. But if we actually to like talk about this and know and show like one accommodation is giving them like a preview to vocabulary. So like you actually doing that, you can do that across the board and you're providing that accommodation. Right. So like I really like this if then statement, because again, going back to what you said before, like this is cross curricular. So like I would talk to actually all my teachers, not just talk to one about like, okay, how can we use this to ensure that like they are able to apply this vocab to understand what's going on, but like in general, like overall, like how can like teachers like think about your students with IEPs and how would you present this, because the way you present it can also be helpful for everyone else as well.
So my ear is gonna be tuned to the student with IEP department. But asking them also, are you doing this critical work yourself? And how you do your push-ins and pull-outs, so you're saying the correct vocabulary to students too, and you're pushing it with them as well. So I'm gonna be looking for that in the conversations you're having with them, and then have conversations they're having with students, as I'm observing you and observing them doing this critical work as well.
And I think that, what was also a big push for me, having, conversations with content and grade level teams, like individually. I know everybody is afraid of the STAR 2.0, but, I just wanted to reaffirm with people, the TEAC doesn't change. The TEAC is still the same. So what work is it gonna take for that student to be successful? And I will go back to that real quick. 5.4B, I had it in my notes. I think, and if I'm correct, 5.3B, to the past 2 stars has been tested 1 question. But 5.4B, in last year's star, I think it was 3 questions. I have to check in my notes. I think it was 3 questions. So if we go back to the TEAC and the likelihood of this particular TEAC and students being able to break down number 2, which is a word problem, which I can use a dictionary on to make sure that I am leveraging the accommodations that all students have, not just our students with IEPs. I think that we will find that when we break those TEACs down again, we set students up for success holistically. Like, it's not just about a variable, it's not just about the 4 operations. It's literally about the student being able to tell me, what is this problem asking? Because if you can tell me what it's asking, you can definitely find the correct answer. And that's what we see, that students don't know. They have no idea what's being asked of them. So again, it goes back to the know and show, and then using that know and show that's what we're going to create that CFS so that students are doing heavy lifting.
And I'm even thinking like just having teachers do that modeling too. Like, how can you use that CFS and model what it looks like while students are writing while I'm showing you, so they know clearly what the CFS is and they've seen an example. Like, what are those steps?
And that, so I'll just give you a real quick gist. I hope this makes sense. The way that their class is supposed to be structured is you do a do now, check, and you do vocab. This is it goes further down. But this is exactly, particularly since this is math, this is the breakdown of how I instructed math to do their breakdown, because I walked into a classroom.
I love that. And
literally
my brain was thinking every class across the board. And I know that we can't do all things in this 1 year, but that needs to be the model. In every class, we're having the vocab breakdown. Like, even if it's a 5-minute spot.
Oh, I don't care if it's 1 or 2.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I agree, I think.
So math specifically has, this is part of the breakdown, and they go to model, guided practice, independent practice, exit ticket. That's their instruction. But I honed in on the vocab a couple of weeks ago because I did see it. I walked into a class and the student could not tell me what a ratio was. And the whole class was about ratios. So I think it's so essential that we go back to it. And again, writing is already, that's why I came to ask you for those dictionaries. They both have a class set of 15. Again, the conversation going back with Ms. Fuller, I'm gonna go check in her classroom this week to see if she's implementing the feedback of, so what they're doing in social studies is she has about 5 or 6 groups of 4, something like that. And I'll just do a really quick draw of it.
And I know they're reading their.
You guys do theirs?
And they have a dictionary / thesaurus.
Okay.
That I gave in the beginning of the year.
So what we're pushing toward, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, they just don't know it's coming up because I spoke with Ms. Fuller. She has about 5 or 6 groups of 4. So she's gonna sticker the tables 1, 2, 3, 4, however she wants. And let's just say on Monday, person 1 in each group is in charge of the dictionary. So that helps to build their usage of the dictionary, their fluency, starts to think about spelling. Then like Tuesday, we'll go to 2, Wednesday, Thursday, and then back to 1. So that again, even if they start now, it is mid-October, but even if they start now, they already know how to utilize their dictionary to their advantage by the time they get to IA1. So just creating good habits. That's essentially what I want for all teams, is just really to create good habits now and not try to leverage it in when start happens. But yeah, that's particularly math. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Can we do, what's your next slide?
That's it.
Can we do round robin of feedback?
Yes. Oh yeah. Give me some feedback, please.
It was effective when, like just having the breakdown and the, more so like the push. Like I think it's great. Like when I first saw the presentation, I'm like, oh, this guy's doing a great job. You know, like I saw the data, but then like really just not like you name, not focusing on just because the wheel is green, like really focusing on how we can take this beyond, which is pushing the students on what they actually know and showing that. So I think that was very like effective and even pushing teachers to recognize that too, because I know even like putting myself back in the shoes, like focusing on the wheel rather than the future. Yeah.
And it's gonna happen.
That's the same right there.
Yeah. Because you hone in, you think about, okay, my will is my pathways, my will is, but then like if we don't just focus on that, it could push them even beyond.
We have to build good students. I really believe that. We have to build good students. Good people. And if we're building good people, they will in turn be great students, actually. So.
Next time,
I guess my next time try would just be the push for including with the CFS the modeling, like having teachers practice how to model this for their students, so students can see exactly what I'm doing. You're taking a pencil to paper and doing this as well. So when it's your turn, I'm seeing that you've seen and paid attention to what I'm doing.
Thank you,
Shout out to you for doing your first APM. You did amazing.
Thank you.
And yeah, so like already you hit the nail on the head with a lot of things, like, and that's like my notes have like, okay, this what am I gonna do next to help out? What can I do? Then steal the vocab breakdown idea, because that is definitely like an easy lift for teachers to do to cover one of those accommodations when it comes to creating vocabulary. Next time try, I say like when like going through the APMs, probably like go further into depth when it comes to like what you noticed when it came to like what like creating your know and show as well, or like what students need to know.
So you would like to have seen that on there.
What you noticed when it came to like misconceptions.
Got it.
So that could also help out with like just general things. But overall, great job with the team.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Thank you for that feedback. Coming up on my show, please.
It was effective when you were super receptive of feedback, and being willing to make pivots to do what's best, not just in this moment, but for the trajectory of your department, the campus. It was effective when you also did not stay with mediocrity. So yes, it was a green, but let's get to the root of it. And you got us to the root of it. And not just saying, I don't know what to do, like, I mean, we're green. There's always something for us to grow in. And the fact that you were willing to take us there, I really appreciate that, because I've heard before, we're green, so there's really not much to talk about. No, you took it to the level I'm expecting, and I'm hoping that we continue to do on our campus. And it was effective when you even gave us all the same students to help us to narrow in even more on what the misconception is. I would say next time try, we did it in the moment, but next time try, I can tell you identify the misconception on your own, because you were able to lead us there, but next time try using that misconception to drive your impact statement.
Okay.
So your impact statement at first seemed like an isolation of what the misconception truly was. And thank you for being open to marrying them together.
Yeah.
But in your next time that you present, just think about what it, like backwards planning. If I'm seeing this as the misconception, how do I use that to then drive my impact statement?
Okay. Got it. Thank you for letting me know.
So what are you hearing in your feedback and your next steps?
So from Ms. Godfrey, to make sure that I stand that, to include modeling in the feedback to teachers, that they should model what they want to see from their students, so that a student can actually leverage the CFS, because if they haven't seen it, it could be present and they don't know how to use it. Ms. Solis stated to make sure that I go in depth about the know and show, to make sure that I actually show the breakdown of that know and show work, so that I can then show you what my expectation would have been if I were teaching the teacher. And then also to use from you, Ms. Young, to use that misconception to drive my impact statement, to make sure that it's not so broad, to really, really zone in on the small detail that I need to increase student success in data.
All right. I'm excited for this action step not to only live in math, but to live in all of our spaces. So as I come in and observe teachers and even leaders, I would love for this to be a core discussion that I'm hearing throughout this entire week. And I really appreciate, like, I know it was a headache for us readjusting, but I am appreciating APMs being at the top of the week, because it does create a road, like a ramp for us to release this on and fly even higher with our campus. So this is a B week. So, I mean, I know I have 2 O3s today, but still, how, like, even being you saying that you're pushing vocabulary as we're going to spaces today, my eye is going to be tuned to that. And then even as I continue to go in spaces throughout the week, how are we having strong exemplars so students can have their strong exemplars, so we can really determine true misconceptions across the campus. But yeah, that's the only way for us to take it to the next level. I do have a few things before we